This is a painting from M.C. Escher, which I think captures the essence of a typical Kafkaesque story. That is, people are trapped not by the absurdity of bureaucracy, but the endless circle of reasoning. Those stories from Kafka are like the mythology of the modern industrial age. The plots are organized layer upon layer, while being paradoxical to each other. And Kafka's general tendency to think may not be in terms of concepts, but rather in pictures. Just like those two drawing hands or the endless stairs, Kafka's protagonists often find themselves caught up in this bizarre and impersonal situation. After reading The Castle and the first chapter of Slavoj Žižek's think piece, The Sublime Object of Ideology, I find myself intrigued by the question of how to find the hidden kernel of ideology and arrive at the conclusion of the demise of MacGuffin. Kay, the protagonist of The Castle, arrives at the village wishing to be a land server appointed by the castle authorities. However, all his efforts are in vain. He tries to gain recognition from the authority and search for proof of his identity. He makes love to Freda, befriends Barnabas' family, meets the village officials, and sends messages to the castle. Yet all his strategy failed. On his deathbed, exhausted by his efforts, Kay receives a permit stay. There has been two usual different interpretations of the Kafkaesque story. One is to interpret the inscrutable and inaccessible transcendental characteristics of the castle and the court as signs of an absent god. On the contrary, the other interpretation only sees the castle and the court as the opposite of the manifestation of Kafka's inner desires. That is, the castle and the court serve as a negation of Kafka's excessive desires. Although these two readings are opposed to each other, they both leave out the same point. This absence, this empty space, is already filled by some inert, lecherous, repulsive presence. The castle and the court are not absent, but are visible or present in all their flattering, lascivious, and corrupting images. So the problem is not that God is not present, but that God is all too present. However, from Zizek's view, these readings are both trying to find the kernel hidden under the reality, the being, or the ideology. In this triadic schema proposed by the author, commodity and dream share the fundamental homology of manifest content, latent content, form, or unconscious desire. The latent content of the dream is the latent dream thoughts, and the manifest content is the literal text of the dream. The latent content of the commodity is work, while the manifest content is the commodity's value, usually represented in its price. People generally deem this significance lies in the latent content or the kernel of dream and commodity. However, based on Zizek's view, the essence of the dream or commodity is not its latent content, but rather the dream or commodity work itself. Therefore, it's reasonable to say that the hidden kernel is also on the form or on the surface, just like the French neologism coined by Lacan extimite or its English translation extimacy. There are things that go beyond the traditional exteriority and psychic interiority. Those who are seeking the hidden kernel are doomed to disappointment because the kernel is the form, the answer is located in the question. Part 2: The Death of MacGuffin. If there is not an ultimate kernel in dream, commodity, or ideology, then what should we be looking for? Lacan's object patia consists of a personal lack of desire to have something fulfilled, because whenever the object of desire is fulfilled, then the person turns to another object of desire. During my first acquaintance with this term, it reminds me of the term MacGuffin. The influential English film director Alfred Hitchcock employed this term to describe the plots of his movies. In fiction, a MacGuffin is an object, device, or event that can push forward the plot and the development of the characters, but itself is insignificant, unimportant, or even irrelevant. According to Hitchcock, the logicians are wrong in trying to figure out the truth of a MacGuffin, since it's beside the point. This remark can find resonance in Zizek's article. It's not sufficient to reduce the form to the essence, to the hidden kernel. We must also examine the process. The essence of MacGuffin and kernel is to put the emphasis on form or action, rather than the result of finding the ultimate object or desire. The Castle for Kay and the Law for the Man from the Country, though being addressed with different names, do serve the same purpose or function. They both represent the MacGuffin that seems inaccessible in their own stories. Based on the reasoning process of Part 1, we must ask ourselves the question, does it really matter to find the hidden meaning of the castle or the court? MacGuffin tells us that if focusing on the process of searching for the ultimate desire, then MacGuffin will be alive and well, serving the right function and purpose. However, if one is focusing solely on the desire of object itself, then one will encounter the demise of MacGuffin, because one is trying to reach the unreachable, and that is beside the point. Living in this big, wild world, we are all tickled by desire. The object patia is this kind of illusion that others are not lacking the way we are lacking. This chaos of desire has to be, in some minimal abstract sense, structured by a governing order of desires. Ideology teaches us what and how to desire. This is different from the traditional definition of ideology, which is the ideological lens through that we see the world with. The demise of MacGuffin reminds us that ideology may not serve the way it should if we always want to find the hidden kernel behind the ISA or other ideological devices. Instead of trying to find the meaning of it, maybe we should focus on the form itself. Why people always deem a novel by Kafka as magic realistic is indeed the puzzle, because life does often crush people into the endless circle of reasoning. Ideology and the individuals may find themselves being the echo of the other. They even probably won't know how to proceed without a helping hand from the other. Two of my favorite movies of all time are Citizen Kane by Orson Welles and The Sun Also Rises by Jiang Wei. For the previous one, the term rosebud will lose its captivating essence if the audience is only obsessed with its meaning. For the latter one, what the image of the sun represents is still an enigma. Yet, for a movie, you don't have to understand it to enjoy it to the fullest. Maybe so does life.